Hello, I'm Matthew Malcolm with California Dairy Magazine, reporting to you with Alison Van Eenennaam, a researcher at UC Davis who shared some information on genetically breeding cows to not have horns. Dehorning is a common practice on the dairy, and it's really a pain for not only the dairy producers, but also the cows. And here's Alison to give an update on that research and what dairy producers can get out of that.
Thanks, Matthew. Yeah, so I'm working on a project where we're using a technique called gene editing to basically tweak the genetics of dairy cows so that they don't grow horns in the same way that beef cows like Angus don't grow horns. And this is a project, it's a collaboration with a company called Recombinetics, and we've actually edited a couple of Holstein bulls to not have horns and have actually produced offspring from them, and that not having horns is a dominant trait, and so it's passed on to the offspring. And I think what we're looking at here is a technology to potentially genetically dehorn animals rather than having to physically remove horns. And of course, removing horns is important for protecting animals and worker safety. And it is a painful procedure. It's an animal welfare concern, and we're using a genetic approach to try to address it. There is, of course, naturally occurring animals that don't grow horns in the dairy cattle population, but they tend to be low net merit animals, and they're not very high in their genetic potential. And there's also very few of them. And this would be an approach where we could introduce this genetic variant into dairy cattle breeds, into the very elite genetics, and therefore they would pass that trait on to their offspring and they would be genetically dehorned, if you will. At the moment, we have animals on the ground. We've proved the proof of concept. Whether it will become available to dairy producers is really dependent on the regulatory around gene editing. But if we can get over the regulatory, this really offers an opportunity to introduce polled genetics into elite dairy animals such that it would then become a trait that could be included in a straw of semen, so to speak, so that those calves would no longer grow horns and wouldn't therefore need to be manually dehorned. So exciting technology, lots of other potential opportunities for breeding disease resistance. There's a couple of examples of that already in pig populations, and I think a technology that might enable us to introduce useful genetic variation into our breeding programs in a very precise way. It's really precision breeding, if you will.
Awesome. Well, that's great. We appreciate the ongoing efforts of researchers like Alison at UC Davis, providing better things to improve efficiency on the dairy and increase animal welfare. So I hope this thing goes through and we can utilize it on the dairy. Read more about it in California Dairy Magazine. I'm Matthew Malcolm, CaliforniaAgNet.com.